One of the nice things that we do here is the integration across different parts of the university, and in our view, human behavior is part of all of our energy futures. So where do people matter? Well, they matter in whether or not people will accept energy technologies. You can all think of the controversies having to do with nuclear power, carbon capture and sequestration. Hydrofracking, as Gene alluded to. If people won't buy it, then we won't get it, or if we get it, it's only because people will be very unhappy with it. If we provide, there are energy technologies whose success depends on whether individuals operate them. So if we provide fancy in-home devices to show people how well their energy works, will people understand them? Will they understand the signals that they get? Will they use them? If we offer people direct load control, say, so that you can get a better deal on your electricity if your electric utility is allowed to cycle it off during peak demand periods, will people accept those deals? Will we have, as will soon be possible with smart grids, the opportunity of time of use pricing? So your electric utility will send you a signal that tomorrow electricity is going to be really, really expensive. If you don't use it tomorrow, you can save some money. So go to them all when it's really hot. What about energy conservation? We've all seen lists of 150 things that you could do to conserve energy. Do those make any sense to people? Are they feasible in their lives? It's easy to make a list. It may not be that easy to execute on it. Everything that we believe that we know about energy technologies, we believe that we know it because somebody tells us that. So how well can we trust the experts who've done the analyses of the risks and benefits? Human behavior is the cornerstone of human behavior of expert is the cornerstone of probabilistic risk analysis used to anticipate the reliability of technologies that we've never actually seen in operation based on our understanding of their components and how they fit together. There's uncertainty in all of these things. Whether or not we understand the uncertainty depends on the comprehensiveness of the team of experts that we've put together to see how a technology would work. When things go wrong, how well are we able to analyze and then take action on them? And then all of the energy technologies depend on people to keep them going. Are they maintaining them the way that they should according to the plans? When things go wrong, does the word get out? When people have innovations, are we able as a society to take advantage of them? So there are people everywhere to get the benefits and the risks of get the largest set of benefits and the smallest set of risks. We need to understand the human behavior of the people who operate them, the people who consume them, the people who approve or disapprove of public policies, and the people who claim to know how they work. How do we study this? Well, a typical study will begin with very open-ended interviews, making certain that we understand the broadest range of views that people bring to bear on a technology, because we're one of the most robust of human findings in the behavioral sciences is we exaggerate the extent to which we can read other people's minds and they can read ours. So if you don't talk to people, you don't know what they're thinking about. Typically, we'll follow up with structured surveys in order to find out the prevalence of beliefs in a particular population, whether it's experts or lay people. We'll do lab experiments in order to refine our understanding of how particular behavioral processes work. But then we realize that if these are lab experiments, we often don't know how important the things are that we discover in the lab are in the real world. You run an experiment, whether it's in psychology or biology, in order to get the largest possible variability in the phenomena that interests you, but they may be much larger in the lab than they are in the world. As a result, you need to do field experiments in order to see how fully functioning interventions or technologies work. Field experiments are all, complicated operations. And you can say, well, we've tried to introduce in-home devices or different kind of payment schemes for electricity. What do we know from them? So a naive way of accumulating those data would be to say, well, how often did it work and how often didn't it work? If you do that, then you end up treating all studies as equal, where some of them are clearly better than others. So you can use a technique called meta-analysis, developed originally from psychological clinical trials, now used in medical clinical trials, to see what kind of a signal we have about the efficacy of different programs. You can develop communication programs so that you have the best chance of getting a fair judgment of technologies, and so that people understand what they are. You can develop consultation schemes. An interesting example is we recently had at the federal level, had a blue ribbon commission on America's nuclear future that was particularly prompted by trying to figure out what to do with radioactive waste. The commission decided to have a road show of consultations going around the country to see what people thought about it. A review by social scientists realized that they had scheduled this in a way, that they had set this up in a way that was actually likely to antagonize people rather than to make them feel more included in the process. And in the final recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission were recommendations for using scientifically sound to soliciting public involvement. And finally, something that Granger and his colleagues have been pioneers in is how do you systematically elicit judgment from experts and then communicate it in people so that they know how good the best judgment of expert technology of our advanced technologies are. Here's a few of the projects that we've done in the past. My colleagues and I, 30 years ago, wrote a book for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission called Acceptable Risk. Amazingly, it's still in print. The NRC came to us because there had been a belief that if you made nuclear power absolutely safe, then people would just accept it. And for those who followed the future of the industry, however strong the assurances and the engineering for safety, that was not enough. So we said, well, what are the different ways that you can do it? What are the political and social philosophy you can have? Granger and I and some others about 20 years ago wrote a booklet that we sold several 100,000 copies of at cost, otherwise we'd be wealthy by now, about the health effects of 60 hertz electromagnetic fields, that tried to level with the public about what we knew and what we didn't know. And it's my impression that we significantly affected the national debate on that. We've done studies on the siting of transmission lines, where often you'll find opposition to transmission lines based on health effects coming from people who are not that much concerned about health effects, but actually concerned about being treated shabbily in the siting process. But being treated shabbily often doesn't have standing, but you can argue about health effects, and you can have some attempt to get the kind of redress that was otherwise denied you. We've developed methodologies for how to set priorities among risks. We've been studying for 20-odd years how people understand climate change, what are the barriers to understanding, where the barriers to understanding often come from the expert community who explain things in a poor way. We've done work, Paul Fischhoff and his colleagues have done work on the safety of tankers and oil platforms. What do we have going on now? Well, we're just about ready to send off for review a study of the Hawthorne Effect, looking at electricity field trials. So the Hawthorne Effect is legendary in the social sciences, which is if you do things, sometimes people respond just because they're in a study. And we have a lot of attempts to change people's behavior relative to electricity. They're mostly in the gray literature of technical reports, but they often have effects that are in the Hawthorne effect range. You raise people's awareness of electricity, and they'll change their behavior. So if all you need to do is raise people's behavior, well, you don't need in-home devices. You don't need a lot of the other expensive things that we're doing. We've just completed a meta-analysis of smart grid field trials, finding most of them to be methodologically flawed, and in ways that, based on the research literature, you can suggest the extent to which they mostly exaggerated the effects of their trials. We've done work on the perceived risks and benefits of smart grid. We have a paper just coming out. Turns out people love smart meters, except they expect them to be the equivalent of jetpacks. that they love them because they think they'll do a whole lot more than they actually do, and they have fears that people didn't think about it. We're looking at markets for ancillary services. Could you sell people the right to poorer quality of energy that comes from renewables, so as to enable the system to absorb the unreliability that you have? And we've looked at these other topics. So why do we do these things here? Well, we have a very broad set of disciplines. We have a long history of collaboration across colleges and within colleges. We have a tradition here of applying basic research and to see how much of what we believe to be true actually is true. It turns out to be valid in reality. And conversely, a long tradition of identifying basic research topics, not endogenously from our own research programs, from confrontation with applied problems. Then we all have this large invisible colleges of colleagues. Often people who are happier working in traditional disciplines, but we can pull them into doing this kind of basic and applied research that this institute is dedicated to. So thank you.